Good evening. We're doing a little test of the stream, bringing the picture resolution up a bit to 720. And we'll see how long it lasts before we start dropping frames or anything like that. If we have any significant problems, I will restart the stream. So anyway, very photogenic storms out there yesterday and today, and they've pretty much died off for the most part. So let's head into our charts. These are the storm reports. We're very far behind for May relative to normal, and we can only see a couple of tornado touchdowns around the Cheyenne area and some scattered hail and wind up and down the high plains. So we have a slight risk out for that area, northwest Kansas around the Garden City area all the way up to Rapid City under that slight risk. Got a lot of severe watches out, but no tornado watches at this time. And of course we have a little bit of tropical action. We've got subtropical storm Alberto out there, 55 knots, so we're getting very close to hurricane strength there. Central pressure pretty high there, 991 millibars. And let's look at that forecast there. Official NHC forecast going for landfall around the Panama City area, just a little bit west of there. And we're expecting quite a bit of flooding, especially along and to the east side of the track there. Expecting some very heavy rainfall amounts there, especially with that slow motion and the storm surge, of course. Maybe some problems up and down the coast there. Let's start out with the 250 millibar chart. And I'm curious if anybody is watching this in 720. I was hoping to maybe show a little bit more of that aerial footage. Very beautiful in the higher resolutions. So I was going to see how much of that we could push down the internet there. All right, hang on a second. All right, looking at our 250 millibar chart, this is going to be up at about 34,000 feet. We've actually got ourselves a jet stream there across Arizona. So typically what we have there in the desert southwest is not a jet stream. We tend to have a very strong ridge. And I'm wondering if I can maybe go to a historical chart. I guess I'm not going to be able to do that. I was going to show you an upper level chart showing the ridge, but I can just draw that on real quickly. 250 millibar chart will kind of look like this, and then we would find the jet stream way up to the north. So we've got kind of the opposite there. In fact, we got this very deep low in the Great Basin area. And this has been kind of a series of lows that has kind of formed in that area, moved off to the northeast, and been replaced by another one. And then the prevailing pattern, the long wave pattern, maybe shows a bit of a ridge there on the west coast. And that means we have a very high inclination for cutoff highs up to the north, and that gives us that blocking pattern in this area. All right, 700 millibars, so let's see how we're looking. Very significant warm-up compared to Friday when we looked at this. Back then we were seeing temperatures about around 8 to 9, I think, and we are up to 13 to 14 there on the high plains, so that's why we don't have widespread precip in this area here. And where the cap is cooler, 7 to 8 Celsius, we've had a few thunderstorms breaking out there in far east Texas. And let me shut off the air conditioner. Yeah, it is that season. Gonna have that AC on until October at least. 850 millibars showing the moisture and low-level jet field. Lots of 20 to 35 knot winds in the Caprock region of Texas all the way up to western Kansas. Pretty much south to north there. And the moisture entering that jet region is a little bit dry. About 4 to 10 Celsius there. So we've got a little bit of a moisture deficit in the Rio Grande area, and we're also not really tapping the Gulf very well. In fact, we've got just this recycled air coming on shore, and consequently Moisture is only about 7 Celsius there at Corpus Christi, and about, I think that's a 3 there at Lake Charles. Some of the better moisture is actually inland around the Fort Worth area. So that gives us kind of a good picture of what's going on. When we proceed to look at the skew-t's, we'll have a basic idea what the fields are looking like there. All right, 1,000 through 500 millibar thickness from INSEP. Let's bring this up. I guess our website wants to sleep there, which is fine. We can let it do its thing and come back to it. Let's take a look at the NAM. And looks like we can pick a little bit of, there's a little bit of Alberto way off to the right side. So this starts out around midday, and you can see the purple here showing very warm temperatures in West Texas with this southerly flow coming up. And of course that air mass is dry. We saw that on the 850 millibar chart. So dry air tends to warm very efficiently. So we have widespread 100-degree temperatures in that area. And let's see what happens overnight. Breaking out some storm clusters in the northern panhandle. Let's see when that happens. That's right around 4 to 5 p.m. Another cluster being forecast there in southeast Colorado. And then you can see those code pools spread out. And meanwhile, Alberto coming on shore there in western Florida, taking that track on up to Alabama with that massive amount of moisture embedded in the circulation. And then up to the north tomorrow, looks like we have initiation in western Kansas. We lay down this very strong cold pool. In fact, I think there may be a front coming in from the high plains there, kind of reinforcing that. And that all pushes to the south. So starting out the day for Tuesday, looks like a series of outflow pools, and maybe one out there in New Mexico also. So this could set up the boundaries for Tuesday. May see some storm action there in the Amarillo area later. Yeah, there's the warm-up right there. And there's our storms. So this is Tuesday's storms. Meanwhile, Alberto coming inland, coming up towards the Nashville area, dumping a lot of rain in that area. So that's just kind of a quick look on the southern plains. Let's take a look up north. Okay, so we can see that cold front coming in, the western South Dakota area down into Wyoming. So the leading edge of this air mass is going to look something like this here. Doesn't make much progress into the higher terrain out west. But yeah, this is a very potent area for storm development. You can see the backed winds there around Scottsbluff and Alliance. That's a very good pattern there for development. And also some of that moisture making it into the Palmer Divide and Colorado Springs area. So looking at that overnight, massive cold pool being generated from all that activity. Then by dawn, some of it spreads eastward, and it's kind of mixing with that cold air mass itself. And I'm just taking a guess, maybe some of the cold air is coming all the way down through Denver now. Anyway, boundary is surging eastward for Monday. Looks like a bit of an MCS along the Kansas-Nebraska border there. Might be looking for a little bit of severe weather in that area, possibly. It all comes down to the upper level flow. And then for Tuesday, looks like a meso high across western Kansas. See right there, there's kind of a divergent flow. So that's all that, that's the remains of all that cold air, temperatures in the upper 60s throughout the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern part of the front driving all the way down to Oklahoma and Texas there. So this probably be a good time to take a look at the satellite. So there's the visible imagery right there. We're going to start using this GO16. And I'll show you a little bit of the development across Texas today. There we go. We'll start out earlier today around, this is 1:30 p.m. Pretty nice cumulus field in East Texas there, and there are boundaries, believe it or not. I'm sure if you went through the higher resolution data, you would be able to find some boundaries in that. Or late morning is a perfect time to locate those. It's a lot harder finding those out in clear air, so you have to turn to radar and surface trends. So moving that forward, yeah, there's the storms developing there in East Texas, kind of surging to the west. And it looks like we've got a little bit of jet stream energy coming in from the west out here. You see that cirrus spreading into the Roswell and Hobbs area. Then up to the north, let's see what this thunderstorm cluster looked like earlier. This is how it looked around 1:30 this afternoon. You can see one line of storms gets going there around Wassenberg to just east of Pueblo. Another area of storms right around the Denver area. And you can see a couple of towers already across the mountains of Wyoming. That's where those tornadoes were. And then rolling that forward, you can see the very deep southerly flow through that area. Many, many storms going up across the plains of Colorado, western Nebraska, and northwest Kansas there. And basically you can just look for the overshoots to find where the stronger storms are located. There's a good one right there around Burlington. Then, of course, we got Alberto out in the Gulf. This is what it looked like. Let me get this recentered. This is what it looked like earlier today, around 4:30 p.m. There's the infrared loop there, showing a lot of dry air being entrained into that system. And we can also look at that on the visible. That's also pretty spectacular. And there's our storm out there in the Gulf. All right, zero drop frames. That's incredible. I guess we are streaming 720. Let me take a look in chat, see what we got going on there. Got Sue M here and Erica Baker out there in Kansas, 85 over 71. Carl Berghoff, welcome to the program. Also Trent Tubazuski, cold beer, sounds great. Willie Greenway out there in Georgia, getting ready to eat turkey pot pie. Funwood Tech also joining us, and Burl H, July in Iowa, temperatures in the upper 90s. Yeah, I saw Chicago this morning around 10:30. It was already up to 86. They were hotter than much of Texas at that same hour. Andrew Hotchkiss liking the drone footage, and Cthulhu also likes that drone footage. Ryan Toomey's joining us. Carl Burkhoff says, nice looking storms there. Jeff Craw, big rain heading his way. And Ryan getting the rain there in Florida with those bands from Alberto coming into the Miami and Tampa area. Fuzzy picture. Yeah, I did break down the bit rate a little bit. And just scrolling through the rest of the chat very quickly. Yeah, I just wish I could stop time and read all these messages. Looks like some pretty good discussion in there. Jeff Kropp talking about some of the satellite data. Strong to marginally severe thunderstorms in western Europe, thanks to Best Weather PT. And yeah, Carl Berghoff, that's the resource we're using right there, weather.cod.edu, and then the experimental. All right, yeah, the drone footage. I appreciate the comments on that, and keep in mind that you can, of course, donate. There's the, whoop, yeah, there we go. No, we're still here. Sorry, I pushed too many buttons. Anyway, yeah, if you enjoy the material we have here on Meteorology Lab, please donate. It's patreon.com/metlab. And that did help us to replace that drone. The old one went out because a motor burned out. And I think without the Patreon donations, we would have had to just skip that as a frivolous expense. But anyway, I'm glad you appreciate the images. And thanks to Shannon there for putting this graphic together. So back to the maps. There's Alberto heading up towards Panama City. So let's take a look at the forecast, see what's going to happen. Actually, yeah, the skew-ts. Let's go look at that. So I think we're going to start out with Fort Worth here. And there we go. It's a definite loaded gun there at Fort Worth. The moisture is a bit on the weak side. You can see that we start out there around 68 degrees at the surface, and then just off the surface we get into a little bit drier air. So if we read the bottom part of that dry layer, that's about 17 Celsius, which is about 63 Fahrenheit. So we drop into the 60s, the lower 60s, and the upper 50s, which is not great. In a severe weather situation, we're going to be wanting mid to upper 60s at the very least. So we would want something more like this. So if we try to lift this, let's do that. We'll assume a temperature there of 34, which is about 95. And we are just barely capped there. There's the capping, probably about 100 for the convective inhibition. And it did break in some areas, especially out in East Texas where we had deeper moisture. And then we have this long skinny cape, pretty elevated. So the LFC right there, that is pretty high. That's going to be up at about 560 millibars, which is close to about 15,000 feet. So yeah, we do have the camera up. And let's take a look at a couple of more skew-ts. Let's try looking at some other areas of the country. Let's do let's try Omaha. Come on, Omaha, let's get that going here. Looks very similar to Fort Worth there. Start out with a 59 degree temperature, drops off into the low 50s to upper 40s, so it is much drier. Yeah, that's almost a striking similarity to Fort Worth. And then we're looking at a stronger cap in that area. So not too many widespread storms expected in that area. Let's try Albany, New York for something different. And this looks like a frontal inversion. See that right there? It's pretty humid. The lines are very close together. Moisture and temperature line very close. And it slopes that way, indicating an inversion. That tops out right around there. So it looks like about maybe 6,000 feet of tropical or of polar air. Southerly flow there, indicating it's probably in the process of modifying. Maybe a warm front just to the south. And above that, saturated air. So probably lots of clouds, maybe some rain in the area. And there's one of those artifacts there on the soundings where the balloon pops out of the top of a cloud. And we get that evaporational cooling from the moisture accumulated on the temperature sensor. So we have that spike that goes over that way. And that's an artifact which doesn't actually exist. So the sounding should actually go something like that right there. Okay, brings us to our forecast. I think we'll start out with Alberto, see which way it's headed. High resolution model, high resolution rapid refresh, bringing that pretty much right up towards Panama City. Nice compact spiral band right there. Maybe about 100 to 150 mile radius. So looks like a lot of that will miss Tampa and Mobile. Let's take a look on the high plains. There's those storms there in Colorado. It looks like they're going to form up into an MCS and move into central Nebraska and up into the Scottsbluff area later tonight. Don't have as much upper level support down to the south, so looks like the tail end of that dies out pretty early in the evening. And that can be important because the path of this MCS, that determines where the boundaries are going to be tomorrow. So it looks like maybe some of those around the I-70 area that we're going to factor in for tomorrow's forecast. And then in Texas, of course, not much of anything. You can see the ridging up there to the northeast. So we've got a component of the pressure gradient running kind of like this, from east to west or northeast to southwest. So that's helping to bring in a little bit drier air into Texas, and the Gulf, as a result, is not really open at this time. With Alberta being out to the west, in fact, the flow is offshore. So Alberta there having a kind of a disruptive effect. But on the other hand, it is bringing moisture northward. Let me show you on the precipitable water. Yeah, see all this vast moisture, 2 to 3 inches there in Florida. Meanwhile, out to the west, much lower amounts. In fact, we kind of erode some of the moisture out in Texas and Louisiana. On the other hand, out in Florida, look at that. Southerly winds bringing in that deep Caribbean moisture into Florida. So we're looking for probably a lot of wet weather there in Georgia, Carolina, Georgia. I already did Georgia. Let's try that again. Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and Alabama. Looks like kind of a rainy pattern for those guys. Remnants heading up towards the Great Lakes. So pretty much anywhere along and to the east of the track, we're looking at quite a bit of precip, and maybe below average to the west of the track out in this region here. We have kind of the opposite effect taking place on that side of the storm. For the short term, let's look at the NAM, check out the upper level patterns, and there we can see the ridge across Texas, helping us to suppress a lot of the thunderstorm activity. And there's that big trough out to the west, polar front jet like that, and that's carrying most of the energy and storm potential out to the high plains. And that low just continues to spin and lifts up to the northeast. So it appears most of the precip is going to be from Kansas and northward over the next couple days. Alberta comes inland, and that leaves Texas with a ridge. So it should stay kind of dry there. Looks like a wave of some kind coming onto the west coast around Wednesday. So this might have some potential for the panhandles there, or Oklahoma, North Texas. We'll keep our eye on that one for later in the week. And looks like another wave coming onto the coast, kind of reinforcing that pattern there of troughs in the Great Basin area. So let's go to the GFS and look at the forecast. For Monday, looks like a lot of thunderstorm activity there in Colorado once again. Also western Kansas, looking for some potential there. And pretty good moisture feed coming up there from Abilene to Childress up to Dodge City. So this is suggesting probably some good chances of storms, perhaps around the Colby area, down to maybe Tribune. Meanwhile, Alberta coming on shore. And let's forward this to Tuesday. Looks like a slight, maybe a slight outflow boundary there in southern Kansas. We get things warming up during the day. Redevelopment in Kansas once again. So we'll probably have an MCS moving out of eastern Kansas for Tuesday night. And then Wednesday, Looks like things will be a little bit more spotty, maybe the ridge overhead suppressing things. However, we do have that cold front boundary running something like that. So might be looking for maybe around Blackwell, back to Woodward, possibly some chances for storms there. Then for Thursday, inverted trough in the Red River region. Looks like the ridge is keeping things pretty quiet. All right, Saturday, Sunday, we'll just kind of go with the model there. Looks like some MCS activity in the central and northern plains. Then we get this high-pressure area building in from Hudson Bay. See that very extensive ridge there, centered in the Hudson Bay area. So that's going to drive a cold front southward. Something like that around the weekend, so we're going to have rain chances going up. It's like kind of wet there in Arkansas, and now you can see that frontal boundary pushing all the way down to the Gulf Coast. Is the Gulf open? Sort of, but most of the moisture is heading for Florida. So as if they need more rain. Anyway, next chance of rain will be on the west side of that frontal boundary. Looks like some more energy coming in from the west there, and you can see this storm area developing, and the thickness patterns are indicating something like that. So that is probably going to set up a northwest flow event. So you can see that moving southward, making it to about Wichita Falls, Rabbling, and then another northwest flow event for Tuesday night. Now we're getting pretty far out. This is 264 hours, but looks like another front coming into the Texas area. And we just kind of flop back and forth between southerly flow and frontal passage, and now we've got deep southerly flow there for the 12th. And yeah, that's probably about as far as we want to go. It's kind of a very stagnant pattern there. Lots of highs up there in the northern U.S. and Great Lakes area. Lots of southerly flow in Texas, and we're just kind of stuck between the two weather regimes there. Anyway, I have been looking a lot at that experimental satellite source there at COD. It's great stuff. Let me try to find it. Give me just a second. Yeah, there it is. And I would definitely recommend checking this out if you can. It's at, yeah, the way you get there is go to weather.cod. Just go to your weather analysis tools, your satellite and radar, and then your experimental GO16 viewer right there. And that'll take you to the site. They've got all these different imager bands. So if you wanted to use this band right here, which is sensitive to cirrus, you would select that. You can see it lighting up there. They've also got these composite products. This air mass one is pretty interesting. It seems to, from what I can tell, it's dividing possible mid and upper level air masses up by their moisture and temperature characteristics. So it seems like a lot of these green and orange areas that are very favorable for moist convection. And then, of course, on the other hand, a lot of the purplish and bluish areas, those tend to be a little bit drier. Anyway, what I find is the gradients are they provide a very important clue. And what I would do is, like, if you see something like this going on right here in Arizona, where you have this transition between violet and green, I would go into the skew-ts and into the model skew-ts and try to figure out what's going on, why there's a difference. And a lot of times it's because there's perhaps a very moist layer in the upper levels in this area and then very dry on the other side. So that could be what's going on in that region. One thing I do find that seems to be pretty consistent is your light purple areas. Let me bring one up here. Hang on a second. Let me go back just a little more. Yeah, a lot of this, what I'm trying to show you, is disrupted by the circulation of the storm down there on the coast. But you can see this light purplish region. It seems like that's corresponded pretty well to where we have like a very rich tropical air mass. A few days ago, that was very prominent there in that region, and we were seeing numerous air mass storms going up in that part of the country. It was very cool. Anyway, I'm going to keep using this and see what it has to offer. And I'd also recommend checking out this NT Microphysics. It's a good way of seeing processes going on at night, especially if you go into these localized sectors. Let's see if I can bring that up here. Yeah, I see right there, it looks like a little bit of stratus being picked up just before dawn in the Victoria area, Columbus, Flatonia. And the infrared did not show that very well because it matched the surface temperature very closely. So there are some very neat products in there. Again, I would recommend checking that out. And let me just take a quick look in chat, see if anybody's got any comments about that. Okay, let's see here. Carl Burkhoff seeing storms firing across northeastern Minnesota. Elevated hailers. And very good. All right, anyway, I'm surprised this stream held up. I think this is probably our first 720p live stream. And I'll look on here on the broadcast software, only 83 drop frames. That's about 3 seconds across 34 minutes. That's very good. Anyway, please let me know or email me how the quality is, if it's improved from yesterday, especially those opening clips, or if it looks worse. And we'll take that into account and figure out how to set things up for tomorrow. All right, so that'll probably do it for me. I appreciate you all joining. Closing music. There we go. All right, everybody take care. Have a good rest of your Memorial Day weekend, and we'll see you tomorrow. So have a good one.